response to rising inflation, Social Security benefits will see a boost next year. Recipients will see an 8.7% increase. That is the largest cost of living raise since 1981. Here now, with more on that adjustment and the impact it will have, is Javier David. He's the managing editor of Business and Markets for Axios. Javier, welcome. It's so great to have you with us. So, where are we seeing the biggest increases in the latest inflation numbers? And, how is this affecting people that collect Social Security?
Well, it's more difficult, generally speaking, for retirees. So they spend differently. Like, they don't spend the same things as younger workers spend. Like, working workers tend to go out, they spend on clothes, entertainment, et cetera. The biggest expenses by far for retirees are on housing and food. And we know, based on the data, that both of those categories have been extremely difficult over the last year or so.
Absolutely. And overall, September marked an 8.2% inflation rate in the past year, while Social Security benefits are being increased 8.7%. How is the cost of living assessment determined? And do you think that 8.7% is enough to keep up with the rising costs?
Well, it's a complicated formula, and there's a lot to be said about the basket that they sort of use to create it. But 8.7% is slightly higher than the actual current cost of inflation, so it's a little bit more. The average retiree gets somewhere between $1,600 and $1,700 a month. That's not really a lot to live on if you think about it.
No,
but again, because retirees are mostly at home, they're mostly just eating and sort of subsisting on and living in where they are in their physical plant. Their expenses are a little bit different, but still, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, has the average retiree or Social Security recipient, have they been calling for an increase? Has this been something that's been needed for a while, despite the fact that we're seeing this recent increase in inflation, right?
Well, we have these discussions periodically, but this year, for obvious reasons, it's taken on a much more serious veneer, primarily because everyone is feeling the costs of inflation. And this year, there's been so much attention on this because everyone, again, is just sort of trying to grapple with this high inflation environment. Younger workers can do it or displace all of these costs, higher costs, by charging things. Retirees don't charge.
They don't charge, right. Okay, so the average, I guess, recipient is going to receive, what, an extra $140 a month, again, like you said?
More or less.
More or less,
And it also depends because there's a portion of that goes to paying, like, Medicare. So some will receive more than others. But, by and large, most of the retirees, about 70 million on average, will see something next year.
So, Javier, pulling out and looking at the big picture, though, how healthy is our Social Security system, right? I mean, we keep hearing that as the country ages and the young people aren't keeping up, we're not seeing those baby boomer populations and the younger generations. Is it healthy? Can we sustain this?
Well, that's the big question. The short answer is no, and we've been talking about this for a very long time. The fundamentals are still in play, that we have a demographic issue, too many retirees, we have an aging society, not enough workers to sort of keep up with that. We've been talking a lot about the labor market and the lack of workers. That's going to come into play at some point.
Do we know when? We just don't know when.
We just sort of don't know when. We can sort of cross our fingers, but I mean, it just seems to get steadily worse. Whenever we see these projections about where Social Security is headed, it seems that the insolvency issue just continues to sort of assert itself.
And because it's like a future thing that politicians just keep kicking the can down the road.
Absolutely.
Javier David, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks.